Welcome out this morning. Let's start it. We're going to sing that song, Power in the Blood. There is power, power, power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the blood. There is power. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the blood of the Lamb. There is power, power, wonder-working power in the precious blood at the cross. At the cross, where I first saw the light, the burden in my heart rolled away. Then by faith I received my sight. Now I'm happy all the way. At the cross, where I first saw the light, the burden in my heart rolled away. Then by faith I received my sight. Now I'm happy all the way. We got children's church in the back from I think like 5 to 11, 5 to 12, and then a pop up and open us up in prayer. Amen. Welcome out to Sunday school this morning. Appreciate you joining us here. Looking forward to what God is going to do. Amen. We have a number of lessons that we've covered thus far in this series, Introducing Elephants. And just by way of review, what are some of the lessons that we've covered thus far in order to have successful conversations in life? What are some of the things that we have discussed so far? Boundaries, okay. And what did we talk about in having boundaries? How does that help us have successful conversations? God has boundaries, okay. And because we are His children, what does that mean for us? He loves us, and we can have boundaries, right? There's boundaries that we can set. There are boundaries that we can enforce in our lives that will help us to have successful conversations. Very good. We talked about how boundaries clearly define limits, which we need in life and other people need in life as well. Our children need boundaries. Our marriage needs boundaries. Our ministries need boundaries. Our church needs boundaries. Our schools need boundaries. I remember Kim last week talking about how sometimes kids that come to school and they have literally no boundaries at work in their lives, and they are running amok. They're being crazy in school. And so we need boundaries in all areas of life. Okay, so that was one of the lessons. What are some of the others? Nikki? Okay, go ahead. Absolutely. So what is the goal? That is a very good question to ask when headed into a difficult conversation. Are you trying to resolve the conflict, right? Or are you just simply wanting to point out an issue and cause a bigger problem to come out of it? Are you wanting to win, right? I want to win, right? That's what everybody wants to do in life, but the problem is if you win every time, many times you're not actually winning, right? You're hurting the conversation, you're causing people to be hurt, and so ultimately the goal that we should have in going into a difficult conversation, how can we fix this, right? How can we resolve this? We're not necessarily looking for a win just for ourselves, but let's get a win-win. How can I win, but how can they also win? Maybe there's compromise sometimes that's involved, right? Maybe it's not 100% of what you would like to see, but it does resolve the conflict. Okay, so that was One of them, we talked about a few others. What are some of those others that we've talked about? Sorry? Okay, so God is good at having hard conversations. That was the first one that we laid the foundation for the series. God has difficult conversations. He is good at them, and because we are His children, we can inherit His traits. And we can also get good at having difficult conversations. Another one that we looked at is, what is in me? Right? What's in me that is causing me to not want to have this conversation that I know needs to be had? Right? Is it rejection? Is it fear? Is it wounds of the past that have caused me to doubt myself in having this conversation? Or maybe in the past you've been hurt in a difficult conversation. You're like, you know what? I want everybody to be happy. I know right now I'm feeling miserable on the inside, and I feel like I should talk about this, but I don't want everybody else to be hurt. I don't want to make this worse. Right? And so sometimes there's things that are in us that cause us to resist having a difficult conversation. Another tool that we looked at was the tool of listening. And what were some things that we talked about in that lesson in regards to listening? Lisa? What's that? Learn to discipline your mouth, okay? And one of the best ways you can do that is listen more than what you speak. That is really crucial in a difficult conversation. Many times you initiate the difficult conversation, but then the next step is listen. It's like, hey, I want to talk about this with you. Let's talk. However you initiate that conversation, and then maybe you ask a question, and then you listen. You can't listen while you're speaking. I know some people think they can, but you can't listen while you're speaking, at least not 100%. Right? You'll only hear so much if you are speaking while you're trying to listen. Okay, so one last one that we discussed, that was the issue of timeliness. What was the things that we talked about in that? Timeliness. Sylvia? Yeah, absolutely. So if we, rather than dealing with it in a timely manner, if we allow it to, I'll deal with it tomorrow, I'll deal with it next week, I'll deal with it in 2 weeks, a month, a year goes by, and we're like, man, I really need to have that conversation. By the time we have the conversation, it's like, right? We do that, right? We explode because we've been pressing it down inside of us, and it's been brewing inside of us, and we're getting more angry by the second, by the hour, by the day, by the month, right? It's just in there. It's like, oh, and so when we finally talk about it, it's like, and we come out and everything explodes, right? On the other hand, it can actually cause the situation to get worse, right? If you're dealing with your children, right? And like, yeah, I really need to talk to them about doing their chores. I really need to talk to them about, cleaning up their room or whatever. Let's do it practically, right? If you don't talk to your kids about cleaning up their room, what's going to happen? Is it going to get better or worse? It's going to get worse and worse. It's going to look like an explosion happened in their room, right? And so the sooner that you talk with them about it, the sooner the mess will be cleaned up, right? And so in our lives, when it comes to difficult conversations, the sooner you can talk about the issue that needs to be dealt with, usually it will be better. So today we're going to take those 6 foundations. We're going to get into our first concentrated area of life, and that is marriage conversations. The more that I pastor, the more that I counsel couples through the years, the more that I expand my understanding for this office, the more that I have observed how difficult it is for many couples to communicate with one another. The more that I learn from a wide range of resources on marriage, the emphasis is that communication is usually the key to a successful marriage. Jimmy Evans said these words, that communication is the most crucial issue in marriage. It's the most important thing a husband and wife can do together, because communication transcends everything. Every cause of stress in marriage can be addressed with honest, open communication. I had to learn how to communicate in marriage. I was not always the best. I was what you would call a stuffer. I would stuff things down, and my wife, maybe she would do something, and I was like, whatever, I'll let it go. But I wasn't really letting it go. Right? I was using it for ammunition later. I was using it for fuel in the fire later in another conversation that we would have. Right? I was using it to combat whenever she would deal with me about a single issue. I would explode, and I'd be like, well, yeah, but this and this and this. She's like, that has nothing to do with what I just told you about. But you're doing it. She's like, no. That has nothing to do with it, right? But I had to learn that, right? I was not always a good communicator in marriage. I was able to sometimes communicate well in other areas, but not with my wife. And because of that, I was killing the relationship with my wife. I didn't realize or recognize that the strength and joy of marriage was absolutely rooted in this area of communication. So let's get into this morning. Let's get some scriptures here. I need someone to get our main text, Ephesians 5, verse 33. Darius is going to get that. Juana, if you could get Proverbs 18, verse 21 and 22. Selena, you can find Ephesians 5, verse 33. I believe that is the second time. Then let's see here. Esteban, if you could get for me Exodus 15, verse 26. Sylvia, if you could find James 1, verse 5. Jeremy, Genesis 2, verse 24 through 25. And one last scripture for right now, Ephesians 4, verse 15. Okay, we're going to stop right there. And we'll get through this. Okay, let's get our main launching scripture for today. That is Ephesians 5, verse 33.
Nevertheless, let each one of you in particular so love his own wife as himself, and let the wife see that she respects her husband.
Okay, so love and respect, these are the two most crucial parts in a marriage. So let's look firstly this morning as we consider this at the power of communication. Communication has power in every part of life. Right? If you're going to be a successful worker, if you're going to be a successful student in life, you're going to be a successful boss, you're going to need communication. But especially in marriage, you need to be a good communicator. Proverbs 18, verse 21 through 22.
What you say can mean life or death. Those who speak with care will be rewarded. When a man finds a wife, he finds something good. It shows that the Lord is pleased with him.
Okay, so here we find, and this is what every wife rejoices in, when a man finds a wife, he finds a good thing, something good, right? And not only that, it shows that the Lord is pleased with him. Here we see the power of communication, and then immediately after, the picture of marriage. You see, our words are seeds. When we speak, we are planting something, right? Whatever we planted will come back to us. So the question is this morning, what is the current state of your marriage? Well, what is the current state of your communication? And that most likely will tell you, right? If you are in a good state of communication, communication in your marriage, most likely you are in a good state in your marriage. If you're not a good communicator, if you're not having good communication, most likely, I would prophesy or give a word of wisdom or a word of knowledge this morning, that you're probably not having a good marriage, right? You're either stuffing or maybe your spouse is stuffing, and you're just not in a good communication level, right? We don't talk about communicating. Well, exactly. That's the point, right? That's the problem. Well, we don't talk about it because whenever we talk about it, we just fight all the time. But haven't you noticed that you're like in a cold war, right? You're neither side is talking, right? But there's tension, right? There's struggle on the inside. Both of you are angry at each other, but you just simply aren't saying it out loud, right? And that causes lots of problems. Either whether it's a heated war or a cold war, you're still fighting on the inside. You're still planting something. Ultimately, you're still not communicating well. And congratulations, you're the proud parents of a new elephant, right? Whenever you don't communicate, there are elephants being born in your life. There are elephants being born in your marriage. Maybe you have 3 or 4 elephants in your marriage. I've got 4 mostly. Right? The reality is that we all have elephants in the room, in our marriages, especially if you're married. And one day, if you're not married, I hate to tell you this, there will be elephants you have to deal with in your marriage. It's part of life, it's part of marriage. So buckle up, right? Marriage is absolutely a blessing, but it is not easy, right? It can be difficult, but it can also become easier if you are a good communicator. In the book, Crucial Conversations, there are 2 marriage scholars that examined couples in the midst of heated arguments and found people usually fall into one of 3 behavior camps. They are either those who get emotionally drawn in and they resort to threats or name calling. There are those who silently fume on the inside, and then there are those who speak openly, honestly, and effectively. Reality is that many times we're some of each depending on the day, right? We're not usually perfect in any one of those areas. So the question is who do you want to be? What do you want your marriage to be? Right? Do you want to be those that are emotionally drawn in and you resort to threats or name calling? Do you want to be the one that silently fumes inside? Or do you want to be those that openly, honestly, and effectively communicate in your marriage? Upon analysis, they found that those in the third camp, those who speak openly, honestly, and effectively, they were, you never believe it, but they were most likely, out of the 3 different groups, to stay together in their marriage. Another study by Kukolt and Glazer on the immune system, they discovered that those couples who routinely failed in conducting successful crucial conversations had weaker immune systems than those who resolved their issues effectively. Again, this proves the Bible, right? And talking about communications, don't let the sun go down on your wrath, right? There is power in communication, and harboring anger is always going to be destructive in you, right? If you keep that anger inside, it is never a good thing. In life, in general, right? If you're holding on to the wounds of the past, right? If you're bitter because of things that have happened years ago and you're refusing to let things go and give them to God, it's going to hurt you more than it is the other person. Right? You are going to be the one that's actually in chains, not them. Well, I can't forgive them. I can't let it go. How could they do this? Yeah, but you're actually hurting yourself. Right? Medically, right? Doctors have found that there are issues that if we choose to not forgive, right? There are things on the inside, heart problems, digestive problems, migraine headaches, breathing problems. A lot of that can be found in not being able to simply forgive. Amen. Just move that real quick. But the key is, will we have good communication? So for marriage, word power is rooted in the right kind of communication. And that is simply two words: love and respect. Let's read our main text again, Ephesians 5, verse 33.
So again I say, each man must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband.
Okay, so here we find this is a call in the overall picture of marriage, and it is to be applied in the specific arena of communication. Joseph Graney says these words: in difficult conversations, you can approach it three possible ways: avoid the conversation, handle it poorly, or handle it well. Right? What that means is I can essentially choose to either avoid the conversation altogether, engage in a destructive manner, or I can actively use communication skills to navigate the situation effectively with love and respect. There is power in this, right? There's power to change, power to heal, power to bless your spouse rather than to hurt your spouse for the sake of wanting to win in the conversation. So let's look secondly, and then we'll open up for questions at why we communicate. One Christian marriage counselor said that there are 6 reasons for marriage communication. Number 1, there is simply basic information. These are the day-to-day ways that a husband and wife convey details to each other. Like, hey, dinner's ready. Or, hey, my parents left on their vacation this morning. Or, hey, the kids burned down the shed today while you were at work. Right? While these are important types of communication, it's mostly related to facts, right? But we do need to daily be sharing details of life, right? It's actually helpful, right, to share what's going on in your life with your spouse, what's going on at work, right? What's going on in the home, right? It's not wrong for you to be open about the details of your life with your spouse. That is a good thing. Number 2, there is partnership, right? Because a wife and a husband, they are partners. They share needs with one another. They share responsibilities, right? They share, of course, their children with one another. They share their finances with one another, and on, right? Communicating about these shared actions is vital. This includes talking about parenting. Right? This includes talking about money and where you're at. I've counseled couples through the years that have, they have no clue what is going on financially in the other spouse's life. They have no clue what's in the bank. Right? Maybe they have separate bank accounts, or they don't have access to the bank account. They literally have no clue what is going on. They're not on the same page. Partnership is central to a healthy marriage. Ask yourself this question: what are we working on together right now? Is it your parenting style? Right? Is it the kids, and different things that they're involved in? Is it your finances? Is it ministry? Is it calling? Right? What is it that you're partnering together? You're working on together right now, because that is going to help you to be a better communicator in your marriage. Then there is conflict resolution. People have disagreements in life. And if that is true, couples have disagreements in life, right? Those that are married are going to have disagreements in life. But I thought they were my soulmate. And that if they were my soulmate, we would never fight about anything. That's just a fairy tale. Right? Reality is that two selfish people living under one roof, that's what marriage is. Right? You're coming with different backgrounds. You're coming with different ideologies. You're coming with different ways that you were raised, different careers, different ways that you saw children treated, right? Different ways of financially that you were raised. And so because of that, you're bringing that into marriage, right? And there will be time to time that you're not on the same page, right? There'll be disagreements in life. And it's not a big deal if you fight about things in life. It's not wrong. As long as you fight fair. Right? Be kind in the fight, in the disagreement, right? Be kind and listen to the other person. Don't be like, no, I don't want to hear it. Let me tell you, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, hey, can I talk now? No, absolutely not. And that's not fair. Right? That's not a good way to have a disagreement in marriage. Right? To seek understanding. Hey, I'm trying to understand why you are thinking that. I don't get it. Right? There's literal times in my marriage that I've literally asked that question. Can I have you help me to understand why you are thinking that way? Because I don't get it. I was raised completely different. I am white. You are Mexican. That is enough said right there. Right? We are chasms apart. Right? But help me to understand, why do you think that is okay and this? And then there's times where she asked me that. She's like, why did you think it was okay for you to do that? Why did you think it was okay for you to say that? Well, I wasn't thinking. Exactly. That was foolish, right? Yes, it was. Okay, right? So you're seeking understanding, right? You're asking, what is the goal of our marriage, right? Is it to avoid fights? No. Reality is, you're going to have fights in marriage. You're going to have disagreements. But reality is, okay, so if that is true, what is the goal? To resolve the conflict. If you can be an effective resolver of conflicts, you will have an incredible marriage. Right? If you're able to work things out with your spouse, right, you will be blessed in marriage. Fourthly, there is connection. This is huge in marriage. Right? In a healthy relationship, it's easy to connect with one another. You can do it through eye contact, through physical affection, through the words that you say to one another. Reality is, as humans, we are designed to seek connection. One study showed that during an average meal, a couple will have 100 points of connection. That can be a number of different ways, but reality is we need to connect with our spouse. Right? If you're going to have a healthy marriage and you're never connecting on any level, you're not going to have a good marriage. You're going to struggle. Your spouse is going to wonder, are you crazy? Right? Do you love me? Right? You never show that you love me. Right? But it should be easy, but in bad marriages, even connection over a meal is difficult. Hey, how's things going? Hey, you were telling me the other day about a struggle you had at work. Were you able to get that resolved, or what's going on there? Right? Just having simple things like, hey, are we still on track financially? I know we're trying to get out of debt. I know we're trying to do this in this time frame. How are we doing with that? Right? Hey, the kids, you mentioned the other day that the kids, they were sick and they were dealing with this. Are they doing better now? Or is there something I need? How can I help you with that? Can I take them to the doctor? Can I take them to the dentist? Right? You're making connections. Right? You're helping your spouse know, hey, I remember what we talked about the last time we were talking about this. Right? You're making those little connections. Like, hey, how is your love tank? Right? Are you feeling loved? Right? Or are you feeling like there's distance between us? How can we fix that together? Connection. Then there's number 5, and that is personal revelation. This is another critically important type of communication because it involves truly sharing with each other. Right? You tell your spouse about your feelings. You open up about your emotions. I know many times men, we don't like to do that. Right? We don't like to be honest about how we're feeling because we're tough. Right? But reality is, there is one person that you can open up about all of your feelings in life. that is your wife. You should be able to. And if you can't, ask yourself again, why? Why can't I be honest about how I'm feeling? Why do I have to be a tough guy around my wife? Right? Why can't I just be myself? Right? You share your opinion about things with your wife. Hey, you know, this is how I'm really feeling about that. I'm not too sure about this. Right? Or, hey, you know what? I think we really ought to do this. Right? Share your opinions about things. This type of communication, what it does is it lets your spouse into your world. One of the healthiest things that a couple can do together is process negative feelings together. It may not even be about you as a couple. It could be about other things that are happening in one of your worlds, right? Where you're dealing with negative feelings about things that you're opening up with your spouse. It's actually healthy. Let it out. Share what is bothering you, right? About your job, about your kids or your friends or your enemies or your neighbors, and how they're keeping things up late at night, working on God knows what, right? And they're keeping you awake, right? Share what hurt your feelings. Instead of dwelling on them, work them through with your spouse. Finally, there is intimate communication. That is, these are exactly the things what you think, expressions of love, words of affection, the telling to your spouse, I love you. Right? I can't count how many times where I've counseled a couple and one or the other says they never tell me that they love me. I told you the day we got married, didn't I? I haven't changed my mind since. No. They need to know consistently, and they need to hear it. I love you. It's more than just the words. It's even how you say that. Well, I love you, don't you know? Right? It's how you say it, how you express it intimately. These are statements that no one else will ever say to your spouse, and by golly, they should not be saying it to your spouse. Right? Hopefully, because you are the one saying that to your spouse. These words bind your hearts together. They build the kind of closeness that keeps a marriage strong. So ask yourself today, what is hindering your marriage communication? Where does it start to break down? Why is it breaking down? This goes back to lesson 2. What is it in me? Is it that there's a shadow or a sunburn or an unresolved issue? Is there rejection or an unmet core need that is causing our marriage to break down? One marriage counselor said these words, that one thing I've noticed is that children of divorce tend to avoid conflict as adults, especially within their marriage. They worry it's going to end the relationship. Communication during times of conflict is the way to ensure that it doesn't. In fact, conflict often happens during times of growth. And sometimes we're not wanting to, in our marriage, resolve the conflict. We're trying to stay away from having those hard conversations. But sometimes those things are what are causing us to avoid communication altogether. So what we do is we fill what could be connection, what could be communication, with something else. One study found that social media use was cited as a reason for divorce in 1/3 of all cases surveyed. Why? Because I'm trying to connect with you, right? Right? You're trying to connect to your spouse, but they're connected with everyone else. So there's no desire for connection with their spouse. They're so connected to the world. They're so connected to what's going on in the news, what's going on with whoever, I don't know who the current one is, right? The current celebrity, or what, Jeffrey Epstein, or this. And it's like, what's going on out there? I just want to know. And it's like you're so connected to that, but you're not connected to your own spouse. So connected with, oh yeah, here's what all the other mothers are doing with their children, that you're not connected to your own children. Right? You're so connected with, what Susie is doing with her husband, that you're not connected to your own husband. Or even worse, you're connected to all those people of your past, right? That have found you on Facebook, that have found you on Instagram, and now you're reconnecting with them in unhealthy ways. For me, my struggle in marriage communication was rejection. Right? The issue of rejection, the issue of self-hatred, the issue of pride. Right? Some of that was shadows. Right? Some of that was guilt and shame. Some of that was simply a missing core need that I had, and that was competence. Once I became aware of what was in me, right, I had to identify it, right? Then I could settle it, and I could apply it. I am so grateful that my wife, through that growing season in our marriage, she was patient, right? She was persistent. Her communication towards me helped me recognize the power of communication in marriage, right? And now, almost 14 years later in marriage, in January we'll be celebrating 14 years, we have a very good and blessed marriage. Why? Because we learned how to speak to one another, and I learned how to talk out and express what was really in here, what was really going on the inside. And if God can help my wife and I know for a fact God can help anybody in their marriage. Right? If God can restore, if God can bring healing in marriage, right? If God can help us to become better communicators, I know He can do the same in your marriage or in your future marriage. Okay, let's open up any questions or comments before we move on. Talking about marriage conversations. Ready? Can we get a microphone?
So I remember it was makes sense in my head, but let me see if I can bring it up. As a wife and also me being similar to my husband, I have thoughts or disagreements on things in our life, right? It just happens. But what is the difference between bringing up a topic or even something that I need or I want? What is the difference between talking in a correct way or communicating in a correct way versus manipulation? Like, where is that line? Because sometimes I do talk to my husband and I'm like, I wanted to see my point of view of what I think that this is why I want this. Whether it's visiting family or just any needs that we have, that I have as a wife, or a disagreement. What's the difference between me trying to manipulate him, or is it healthy? Like, I don't know, because sometimes I leave the conversation feeling like I really shouldn't have even asked him for that. So I don't know the difference.
Yeah, so what is the definition of manipulation? Well, essentially what manipulation is the bending of one's will, right? So you're, instead of talking about it and bringing up the question, right, and hearing him out as to maybe why he's not doing that, right? You're saying, no, we need to do this, right? This is how we're going to do this. And if you don't do it, I'm not gonna, right? That's manipulation, right? Whereas if you're just having a conversation, right? Hey, would it be all right if we do this, right? Would it be okay if we go to my parents' house, right? And hang out and do this, or, then you're posing it as a question. Then you're putting it on his radar. Hey, I would like to do this, without being like, hey, no, we're going to do this, right? Or hey, if you don't do this, then there's going to be consequences, right? It's like, well, there's a fine line there, obviously, right? You can bring up the conversation, you can bring up how you feel, right? And hey, when we don't do this, this is how I'm feeling. I really feel like I want to do this, right? And then hear him out, right? Maybe in talking with him, he'll change your mind and show you that you don't need something you thought you needed, right? And that's communication, right? But ultimately, as you bring it up, you mentioned the word submission, right? As a wife, there's times that, right, if it's not the matter of sin, right? There's times where you bring up how you feel, you bring up your desires, you bring up your wants, you bring up your needs, right? And then you talk with him about it, and there's times where he's going to make the decision for the home. Submission is saying, okay, I may not agree today, we're going to still talk about this, but I'm going to follow your lead, right? And that is genuine submission, right? There's been times where my wife, she's like, follow you. And you know what submission is? I once heard it put like this. Submission is, here comes the hammer of life, right? It's swinging, and you duck, and your husband gets hit by it. Right? Because he's the one that's going to have to deal with the consequences. Right? But that's literally what submission is. In other words, submission for a wife is a good thing. Right? Wives that aren't in submission to the husband, they want to poke their head up, they're going to get hit. Right? That's not what you want. Right? You want to enable your husband to be the godly leader of your home. Right? And so, but that doesn't mean that you never talk. Right? You should absolutely talk. Right?
That's what I was wondering. If I know my husband, and so I didn't know, like, if I know that he disagree, is it even okay to just try to change his mind on it? That's what I was like thinking, like, am I manipulating him by trying to get him even to bring it up? Because I know that he's going to disagree, but if I want him to see my point of view, am I manipulating him by trying to sweeten it? So that's a good point of, I think, your heart where it's at. Ultimatums and stuff like that. Like, stay away from that.
Yeah, because it's not fair. That's not fair fighting, right? That's I want to win, right? If I don't get my way, then it's the highway, right? Which that's not going to help. It's not going to help the marriage. That's not going to bring that conflict resolution. So, very good question. I appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Isaac?
Kind of evil because you already know what you want and you want to change it. But the thing is that she said that she already knows that he's going to say no. She's better off just asking, can we do it? Can we do that? Instead of trying to change the whole thing to get your way. Because that's when you probably stop. I'd get mad instead of trying to change something and make the story and all that, and then find out. Just ask. I say no. And it's better to do that than to try to wiggle yourself throughout the whole thing, Just ask, no, it's no. You gotta understand that when the husband says no, it's going to be no. Right? We should be the head of the family. And there's sometimes that, not good wives, like when you say no, we benefit from it. Sometimes they see things a little bit different also, and there's a lot of times where she's tricked by taking a bunch of times. So it's gonna be a couple, but they're just be honest saying, can we go out, can we do this, can we do this, can we do this? Bueno, se acabó. That's the end. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, so at the end of the day though, right, is the exception to that I mentioned it a moment ago is sin. Right? You as a wife do not have to submit to your husband's sin. You don't have to say, oh yeah, let's go and drink together because you want to drink. Like, no. You can say, no, I'm putting boundaries in our marriage. The boundaries are, we are not going to sin. I'm not sinning for you. I'm not going to hell even for my wife. I'm not going to hell for my husband, right? It's like, no. That's not okay, right? But there's a matter of, okay, so if it's not sin, right? It's just wants, it's needs, it's desires. You gotta work it out. You gotta work those things out. And that's why communication is so key when it comes to marriage. You gotta talk about it. Very good. Any other questions? Comments? So?
I've gone to a graduation party and we got there late and they were having a dance. The dance had already started. And I could see, we've been together 44 years, younger women, they were trying to get my husband's attention. And I noticed that. So it made me aware, we're secure that, our husbands are faithful and saved. But out there, there's still women out there that are looking. and I brought it up to him after, and he didn't even notice. You know, but no, I didn't notice anything, but I noticed. So just be aware, be grateful.
Isaac still got it.
Any other questions or comments?
So more of the testimony, I guess, really, my husband and I were both brought up in the faith, at home, and from that, we're both the type to try and like avoid conflict. So when we fight, we don't really like fight or argue or nothing explosive. We just kind of dance around each other in a weird, awkward kind of way. And hearing this sentence, learning about having a hard conversation with how to communicate, and taking that and applying it to our marriage and to our life is actually helped a lot. It's really made us a little bit more bold to have those hard conversations and to communicate better so that we're not like dancing around in this awkward silence and being mad at each other. Instead, we're just addressing the issue right away and hashing it out. And so that I just wanted to let you know, this Sunday school is actually not very big and how to communicate with the Penny. So I mean, if anything, take the advice and try it.
Very good. Yeah, that is something. Jeff?
A lot of times, like in relationships, I think, because we pattern our lives after somebody, right? Depending on if they're godly, ungodly, or whatever, we pattern our lives after somebody. But the thing is not all of our situations are the same, so it's not always going to be the same. My wife's different than that wife, than that wife, than that wife. So it doesn't always work the same. You can get advice, but you kind of got to do it by yourself and what works for your relationship, right? Because not everybody's relationship is the same.
Yep, you gotta, that's why you need to know your wife.
Yeah.
Right? You need to know what her love language is. Your wife's love language could be completely different than my wife's love language. Right? My wife's love language, she loves quality time. Right? Maybe your wife's love language is physical touch. Maybe it's gifts, right? Service, right? Your responsibility is to find out what is her love language and start speaking it. Most likely, your love language is different than your spouse's love language, right? It would be great if you had the same love language, but most often, most of the time, that's how God made it, right? You don't have the same love language. So because of that, you got to learn a second language, right? And that'll really help you in that marriage. Very good. Okay, one last. Sorry. Right here. Yeah. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. Yep. Yeah, and that's why you're a team, right? You're partners together in life, in ministry, in family, right? You're in it together, right? If any of you feel called to preach, right? It's not just you that we're sending out, right? You're gonna go. Your wife is gonna go, right? Your family is going with you, right? So you're gonna be in a partnership, right? You're in it together. Right? We don't just send a single guy into a city, we send a couple. There's a reason for that, right? It's because you're working together, right? There's going to be times where your wife says, hey, how you said that when you preached, that was a little rough, right? You may not have meant it that way, but it came across kind of strong, right? Or how you responded to that person when they came and they talked to you, your face was like, you may not have meant it on the inside, but your face was like, maybe I shouldn't respond like that. Maybe I should put a smile on when I'm talking with people, right? There's things that our wives see that they're just simply trying to help us. So yeah, that's very good, Jerry. I appreciate that. All right, let's close and look at healing your communication. Now, it's possible this morning that as speaking about this, there might be some damage that you're recognizing in your marriage. So the question is, how do you heal the damage? Number one, it begins with praying for God's help. Ask God, God, help me and my wife to become better communicators. Ask God to heal you, right? To ask God for healing or deliverance or breakthrough, and then apply that lesson. Exodus 15, verse 26.
For I am the Lord who heals you.
I am the Lord who heals you, right? If God is able to heal our bodies, how much more would He love to heal your marriage, right? Your communication or lack thereof. God wants to heal us. Number two, pray for wisdom. God, I don't know how to do this, but I want to be the spouse that you want me to be. I can remember every single marriage sermon that Pastor Greg or Pastor Raymond Mitchell or Pastor Jesse would preach right before a wedding. Almost always they would say these words: there are three people involved if you're going to have a great, successful marriage, and that is the husband, the wife, and Jesus Christ. If you don't have Jesus at the center of your marriage, you are going to struggle. Right? Marriage is hard enough as it is. Without Jesus, it's nearly impossible. Right? You're going to struggle. Right? So pray for wisdom. God, I don't know how to do this. I need you to help me to learn how to be a successful spouse. James 1, verse 5.
If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and He will give it to you. He will not refuse you for asking.
Okay, so if you need wisdom, which in marriage, we would all be a testament and agree, we need wisdom, right, to navigate through the pitfalls of marriage. So if you need wisdom, ask God for it, right? And He will give you wisdom. Ask God, God, teach me to love my wife. Teach me to respect my husband. Teach me how to be a blessing even in the difficult conversations of marriage. Then there are some practicals, right? You need to, number one, learn how to initiate communication. And Jimmy Evans said these words: a lack of communication precedes almost every problem that arises in a marriage. You may not be comfortable with it, but you need to settle and apply it. I will get good at being comfortable with communication. How? By doing it. Right? If you're going to be a good communicator in marriage, you need to simply practice communication. Are you going to be good at it the first time you decide that you're going to have a conversation with your wife or your husband? Probably not. Right? But at least you're headed in the right direction. Right? Your spouse might have a heart attack when you decide that, hey, can we talk? He never wants to talk. Right? Learn how to initiate communication. Number two, there's tone. Right? In communication, tone reveals care, compassion, and empathy. Your tone should communicate love and respect. Right? And so you need tone. Pastor Greg said these words years ago: women are responders. Right? It can be all the same words, but your tone matters. Right? You can say, I love you, woman. Or you say, girl, I love you. Ooh, it's completely different. Right? The tone is different. Right? If a man will do right over time, a wife will respond to it. Right? If you speak kindly to your wife, eventually, maybe you spoke like a jerk your whole life, your whole marriage. Right? If you start speaking kindly today, again, she might have a heart attack, right? But if you speak kindly continually, day after day, week after week, eventually she's going to be like, something has really changed in him. And that is a good thing, right? She will eventually respond, and vice versa, right? If you've been a jerk to your husband, right, and all of a sudden you start speaking kindly, he's going to be like, he might be a little skeptical, right? But eventually God is able to heal your marriage. Number 3, there is no substitute for time. Right? This goes back to lesson 5, and that is timeliness. Right? There's proactive and then there's reactive communication. Right? There's things discussed in advance versus in the moment. Fourthly, there is trust. Right? You're not going to be opening your heart to someone you don't trust. Right? Genesis 2, verse 24 and 25.
Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And they were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed.
Okay, so how is this possible? There was trust in marriage. Finally, there is truth. Ephesians 4, verse 15. Go ahead, read that, Drew.
Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ, who is the head of his body, the church.
Okay, so here Paul tells the Ephesian church, instead we will speak the truth in love. Right? You don't have to speak the truth like a jerk in your marriage. Right? You can speak the truth in love. And if you will do so, right, even when you're complaining, right, or trying or coming across as criticizing, you say, you know what? I'm not trying to complain or criticize. I just want this to be fixed. And God will help you in your marriage. Amen. That's all the time we have this morning for our Sunday school. We're going to start service in a few minutes at 10:30. God bless you. Thank you for coming to Sunday school this morning. We'll take this up again next week.